You're scrolling through your phone at 11:47 p.m. when her name lights up your screen. 3 months of silence, and suddenly she's asking how you've been. Your stomach drops. Part of you wants to respond immediately, but another part of you, the part that remembers the confusion, the mixed signals, the abrupt ending, knows exactly what's happening here. And if you've been paying attention to the patterns, you shouldn't be shocked at all. She always comes back. They always do. And before you think this is some alpha male fantasy or bitter ex talk, let me explain the actual psychology behind why this happens, and more importantly, what it reveals about human nature, attachment, and the games we play without even realizing we're playing them. Think about this for a second. When someone walks away from you, whether it's a breakup, a fade out, or just suddenly going cold, they're making a calculated decision in that moment. They've weighed their options, considered what else might be out there, and decided you're not it. That decision feels final, absolute. So why does that same person, weeks or months later, suddenly remember your birthday, comment on your story, or send that "Hey stranger" text? Here's what most people miss about this whole dynamic. The return isn't about you becoming more attractive or them suddenly realizing your worth. It's about their internal world shifting, and you happening to be the perfect solution to a problem they're now facing. Let me break down exactly what's going on in their head. When she left, she had something else lined up. Maybe not a specific person, but definitely a vision of freedom, excitement, better options, or just something different from what you two had. That vision was compelling enough to make her walk away from the known comfort of your connection. She was chasing a feeling, and in that moment, you weren't providing it. But here's where it gets interesting. That feeling she was chasing, it's almost never what she imagined it would be. The grass isn't greener, it's just different grass with different problems. The freedom feels lonely after a while. The excitement fades into routine with someone new. The better options turn out to have worse flaws. And suddenly, her brain starts doing something fascinating. Let me show you how this actually works. Our minds have this incredible ability to rewrite history when we're feeling emotional discomfort in the present. It's called rosy retrospection, and it's the reason your worst vacation becomes a funny story 2 years later, and why people romanticize their college years despite being broke and stressed the entire time. When she's out there experiencing the reality of her choice, her brain quietly starts editing the movie of your relationship. The arguments you had, they become passion. The boring weekends, now they're comfortable stability. The things about you that annoyed her, suddenly they're quirks she misses. Your emotional availability that felt suffocating becomes the attention she's not getting from whoever's in her life now. She's not lying when she reaches out. She genuinely believes these revised memories. The human mind protects itself from regret by convincing us that what we had before wasn't actually that bad. Now, watch this pattern play out. She's in her new situation, maybe single, maybe with someone who's not measuring up, maybe just feeling the weight of her choices. Something triggers a memory of you. Could be a song, a place, seeing a couple that reminds her of what you two had. That trigger activates the edited version of your relationship stored in her brain. And here's the thing. That version is always going to be better than reality because it's missing all the present tense friction that real relationships have. You know what happens next? She starts testing the waters, a casual like on your post, viewing your story but not responding. Maybe she posts something she knows you'll see, something that reminds you of an inside joke or a shared experience. She's not being manipulative. Well, not consciously. She's gathering data. Is the door still open? Do you still care? Have you moved on? She's running an experiment where you're the subject, and she's monitoring your reactions. Here's where most guys make their first mistake. They see these breadcrumbs as signs of interest, proof that she's changed her mind, evidence that the connection was real all along. They respond eagerly, making themselves immediately available, essentially rewarding the person who walked away from them. And that response, it actually kills her attraction faster than anything else you could do. Think about what she's actually seeking when she comes back. She's not looking for the relationship you had. She's looking for validation that she still has power in your world. She wants to know that despite her leaving, despite the time that's passed, she can still affect you. It's not malicious. It's human. We all want to feel like we matter to people who once mattered to us. The problem is, when you immediately validate that need, you remove all the mystery and challenge that created attraction in the first place. Let that sink in for a moment. The version of you she's remembering, the one that's compelling her to reach out, is the version that existed before she knew she could have you whenever she wanted. That version had boundaries. That version had a life that didn't revolve around her. That version was going somewhere with or without her. When you drop everything to respond to her 11 p.m. text, you're not being that version. You're being the version she already decided wasn't enough. So, what do you do when she resurfaces? First, understand that her return is not about closure, reconciliation, or even genuine curiosity about your well-being. It's about her managing her own emotional landscape, and you're a tool in that process. I'm not saying she's a villain. Remember, most of this is happening below her conscious awareness, but you need to see it clearly. The power move isn't ignoring her completely, and it's not being hostile. It's being genuinely indifferent to the outcome. When she texts, you respond when it's convenient for you, not immediately. Your response is friendly, but not invested. You're not cold, but you're also not creating opportunities for extended conversation. You're showing her through your actions that your life continued without her, and it's going well. Here's the thing about human psychology that nobody tells you. We assign value to things based on scarcity and effort. When something is readily available, our brains categorize it as less valuable. When something requires effort to obtain or maintain, we perceive it as more precious. By making yourself immediately available when she returns, you're literally decreasing your value in her eyes. She might stick around briefly, but the same patterns that led her to leave will resurface because the fundamental dynamic hasn't changed. But here's where it gets really interesting. Sometimes she comes back not because of rosy retrospection or validation seeking. Sometimes she comes back because she's genuinely grown, realized her mistakes, and wants to make things right. How do you tell the difference? Watch what she offers. Someone who's genuinely changed doesn't just reappear and expect things to pick up where they left off. They acknowledge their role in how things ended. They don't make excuses or blame circumstances. They demonstrate through specific actions, not words, that they've done the internal work. They respect your boundaries instead of testing them. They're patient with your hesitation instead of pressuring you for immediate reconciliation. Most importantly, they add value to your life before asking you to invest in them again. They're not coming back because they need something from you. They're coming back because they have something to offer you. That's the difference between someone managing their ego and someone who's actually evolved. Let me paint you a picture. Marcus dated Jessica for 2 years. She broke things off because she wanted to focus on herself and figure out who she was without being in a relationship. Translation: she wanted to see what else was out there without completely burning the bridge with Marcus. 3 months later, she's liking all his posts, sending him memes at midnight, asking mutual friends about him. Marcus, still hurt but hopeful, responds enthusiastically. They start talking again. Within 2 weeks, they're hanging out. Within a month, they're back together. And guess what happens 4 months later? She ends it again, using almost the same words. Why? Because nothing changed. She came back seeking comfort, not growth. And Marcus made himself the most comfortable option by being too available. He thought her return meant she'd realized his value, but really she'd just exhausted her other options and needed a safe place to land while she figured out her next move. Compare that to David and Lauren. Lauren ended things after a year because she felt David wasn't emotionally present enough. Fair criticism, honestly. 6 months later, she reaches out. But David had spent that time actually working on himself. Therapy, understanding his attachment style, learning how to be vulnerable. When Lauren came back, he didn't jump at the opportunity. He was honest. I appreciate you reaching out, but I'm in a different place now. I've been doing a lot of work on myself, and I'm not interested in recreating what we had. If you've grown too, maybe we can explore something new, but I need to see that through your actions over time, not just hear it in words. Lauren stuck around. She didn't love hearing that response initially, but she respected it. She proved through consistent behavior over several months that she'd also done her own work. They rebuilt something healthier because David maintained his value and required her to match his growth. He didn't make it easy. He didn't make it impossible either. He just made it real. Here's what you need to understand about the whole "she always comes back" phenomenon. It's not a sign of your irresistibility or her inability to move on. It's a predictable pattern based on basic human psychology: fear of loss, nostalgia, ego validation, and the discomfort of uncertainty. When you know this, you're no longer surprised by it. You're prepared for it, and preparation is power. Now, let me break down the different types of returns you'll encounter, because they're not all created equal. There's the just checking in return, where she's bored, lonely, or just wants to see if you still care. There's minimal effort here. She's not offering anything substantial, just seeing if you'll bite. Then there's the "I miss what we had" return, which sounds more promising, but is usually about her missing a feeling, not missing you specifically. She's nostalgic for the comfort, the routine, the way you made her feel about herself. There's also the breadcrumb trail return, where she never fully commits to engaging, but keeps dropping little hints that she's thinking about you. This one's particularly insidious because it keeps you emotionally invested without her having to risk anything. And finally, there's the genuine "I made a mistake" return, which is rare but real. This one comes with accountability, patience, and a willingness to start from scratch. The problem is that most guys can't tell these apart because they're so relieved she came back that they don't analyze the quality of the return. They just see the notification and feel that familiar rush of hope. But hope without discernment is just setting yourself up for the same cycle. Let's talk about timing for a second, because that reveals everything. Notice when she comes back. Is it right after you posted something showing you're doing well? Right after you started dating someone new? Right after she broke up with whoever she left you for? Or is it during a holiday when she's feeling sentimental? The timing tells you whether this is about you or about her trying to manage her own emotional state. I knew this guy, Connor, who had an ex that would resurface like clockwork every time he posted about a trip, a promotion, or anything that showed upward mobility in his life. It wasn't about missing him. It was about not wanting to see him winning without her in the picture. She didn't want him, but she didn't want anyone else to have him either. Once Connor recognized the pattern, it lost all its power over him. He could predict her behavior like clockwork, and that predictability killed any mystique or emotional charge it carried. Here's the thing about patterns. Once you see them, you can't unsee them. And the "she always comes back" pattern is one of the most consistent patterns in modern dating. It happens because we live in a world where options feel unlimited, where commitment feels scary, where the next swipe might be someone better. So people leave relationships that are good enough because they're chasing something great. Then they realize great doesn't exist, and good enough starts looking pretty appealing in retrospect. So what do you actually do when you're sitting there with her name on your screen? You ask yourself one question. If this person had never left, would I want to be with them right now based on who they are and how they've treated me? Not based on potential. Not based on the edited highlight reel your brain creates when you miss someone. Based on the actual reality of what this person brought to your life and how they made you feel. If the answer is no, then her coming back is irrelevant. You're not being bitter by declining to re-engage. You're being honest with yourself about what you actually want versus what you think you're supposed to want. There's this pressure to forgive, to give second chances, to believe people can change. And sure, people can change, but they usually don't, at least not in the time frame between leaving and coming back. Real change takes time, discomfort, and sustained effort. If she's coming back 3 months after leaving, she hasn't fundamentally changed. She's had realizations maybe, felt regret possibly, but actual behavioral change, that takes longer and requires more than just missing someone. You need to build a life so compelling that her return becomes just another event, not the event. When your happiness, your sense of self, your daily fulfillment isn't tied to whether she's in your life or not, her coming back loses its emotional weight. She becomes someone you used to know who's reaching out, not the person who holds the key to your happiness. Here's what nobody tells you about the power dynamics in all of this. The person who cares less has more power. That sounds cynical, but it's just true. Not caring less about the person, but caring less about the outcome of whether they're in your life or not. When you're genuinely okay either way, okay if she stays gone, okay if she comes back, but only under the right circumstances, that's when you're operating from a position of strength. And women can feel that. They can sense when you're desperate for their return versus when you're indifferent to it. That indifference, ironically, makes you more attractive. But you can't fake it. You can't pretend not to care while secretly obsessing over every interaction. It has to be real, which means you have to do the actual work of building a life that fulfills you without her in it. The question isn't whether she'll come back. Odds are, at some point, she will. The question is, who will you be when she does? Will you be the same person she left, eagerly waiting for another chance to prove yourself? Or will you be someone who's grown beyond the relationship, someone who knows their worth, isn't determined by her presence in your life? Think about what her return actually represents. It's a test, not one she's deliberately administering, but a test nonetheless. A test of whether you've internalized your value or whether you still derive it from her wanting you. A test of whether you've built a life that fulfills you or whether you've been waiting in standby mode for her to come back and complete you. Here's the brutal truth that nobody wants to hear. If she can leave and come back and leave again without consequence, she will. Not because she's a bad person, but because you're training her that your boundaries are flexible, your standards are negotiable, and your life pauses when she exits it. You're teaching her that she can have you whenever it's convenient for her, and that lesson is impossible to unlearn without changing the dynamic entirely. You build a life so compelling that her return becomes irrelevant to your happiness. You develop standards based on consistent behavior, not potential or history. You recognize that someone who genuinely values you doesn't need to lose you to realize your worth. And you understand that closure, validation, and peace come from within, not from someone who walked away coming back and confirming you were worth staying for. When she comes back, and she probably will, your response should be informed by one question. Does this person add value to my life as I'm living it right now? Or are they asking me to return to a version of myself I've outgrown? If it's the latter, wish her well and keep moving forward. If it's the former, proceed with caution, clear boundaries, and the understanding that reconciliation requires both people to be better than they were before. The people who are shocked when an ex returns are the ones who believe the ending was about them being fundamentally flawed or inadequate. The people who aren't surprised are the ones who understand that human nature is predictable. Nostalgia is powerful, and the grass is rarely greener. It's just different grass. You're not a backup plan. You're not a comfort zone to return to when the adventure gets scary. You're not a validation dispenser for someone else's ego. The moment you internalize that, her coming back stops being emotionally significant. It becomes just another data point confirming what you already knew about patterns, psychology, and the games people play when they don't know what they actually want. So no, don't be surprised when she comes back. Be prepared, be boundaried, and be clear about the difference between someone who misses you and someone who misses how you made them feel about themselves. One of those is the foundation for real connection. The other is just nostalgia in disguise. And you deserve more than being someone's nostalgic fantasy.